Hey, how's it going, guys? Thank you for joining us on the Bring on the Blitz pod. It's me, your favorite host, Rios, joined here by Carlos and Poppy. How's it going, guys?
What's up, man? Favorite host since when?
Since always, since
Whatever.
day one, 2 years
Okay,
ago.
You
sure.
were you weren't even here day one.
Yeah,
Neither
you
was
weren't even
I.
here.
Neither was I.
Exactly.
To be fair.
Exactly. That's how I
Oh,
became the favorite as
the
soon as I
worst.
stepped on.
The worst. We barely let you speak. Go on.
Anyways, so today's episode, we're going to be talking about what we believe to be the depth charts, be the depth positions for the running back position, tight end position, and wide receivers. This and more after our intro. Welcome back, guys. So this week, most teams had their OTAs, and it's just really not much to gauge because basically they're playing in shorts. But it's been months since we've had football, so we'll take whatever we can get. And so for the Texans, there's a few positions that are where they have unquestioned starters, but then their backups is up for grabs. But we won't have answers to that until like maybe training camp. But in the meantime, we can definitely watch some of the OTAs, previous tape, kind of make our own conclusions who we feel would be the backup running back, tight ends, and more or less how they're going to rate the wide receivers. So we're going to start off with the running back position. Obviously, the unquestioned starter is going to be Joe Mixon. He's coming off a 1,000-yard campaign with the Bengals. He averages 4 yards a carry. He's basically carried that Bengals offense last season when Joe Burrow went down with injury. So obviously he's going to come into not much competition as far as splitting reps. He's going to be the bell cow, your first down, second down, third down running back. But now it gets a little interesting after him because there's not really a solidified person as far as the running back goes on the roster. So running back 2 is definitely up for grabs. And I've mentioned this a few episodes. I believe the guy they drafted in the 6th round, Jawad Jordan, I think he is going to be the backup running back. He was one of the top, zone runners in college football last season. And his skill set definitely complements this offense. What do you guys believe would be the backup running back in this situation? Carlos, I'll start with you.
So I'm gonna go along with now, of course, like you said, it's all speculation at the moment because really we're in OTAs right now, and there's nothing really that tells anybody, hey, this is the solidified position. Besides, your starters, like you said, Joe Mixon is definitely going to be the day one starter for the Houston Texans. Now, and like you said, the backup running back could be a toss up. My opinion, I'm still going to go with Damian Pierce as the backup running back, and the sole reason why. Well, there's a couple of reasons why, to be clear. Why I think Damian Pierce will definitely be the backup. Few days ago, D'Amico Ryans came out and said that they're looking to see where once Damian Pierce, I guess, catches up to the offensive scheme or whatnot, they feel like they want to have like a 1-2 punch with Joe Mixon and Damian Pierce, and that's what to me kind of tells me, if I'm reading between the lines, this is that most likely Damian Pierce will be the backup to Joe Mixon. Now, of course, it's not all set in stone, like we've said, because you never know what's going to happen during training camp. At the moment, it seems that way. We got to understand at this point, Damian Pierce. I mean, in 2022, Pierce. I mean, he won an award for, like, what was it, the nastiest hit or tough play or something along the lines against the
It
Jaguars.
was, man. He was.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was like the Beast Mode running or something like that. The running
Like that.
Jaguar.
It was like, an award that he won. So, obviously in year 2, he took a step back. And the thing is, he's been open about his struggles, and like there was an interview where Damian Pierce was opening up about it. He says Damon feels like it was like right now he feels like he's at his best mentally. He said that he felt like the stats obviously didn't show it, but he felt the best he's ever been mentally since he's never had that adversity up until this point, playing wise, of course. So he says he's learning to deal with it. Credits the Houston Texans for being patient with him, and he says that Slowick is telling him, take your time. But as he's doing that, he also wants to reward Slowick and everybody by making plays this upcoming season. He's been training with his running back coaches, but throughout the interview that he was having, it almost sounded like he was trying to convince himself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Dip. I
Yeah.
got the same feeling from it too.
Yeah, it sounded like more like he was convincing himself, through that interview. That's what I picked up from it, at least. Of course, that's just me, but he you can definitely see that he had trouble understanding the zone blocking system. And he's really good though with man blocking, with man blocking backs when he follows, blockers or on clear pass or uses a fullback or whatnot. Of course, last season the offensive line also didn't really didn't do him any favors either. There are plenty of things that made him feel uncomfortable, but he says like the offense requires a version of him that he hasn't attained yet. Those were his words. He also said that he can't fix it during the season, but he says it's an off-season thing to prepare. It's a bigger load, so he was shocked, and there were times where he felt stagnant. And not only did he feel that way, but we all were able to see it, and I think that contributed to a lot of. I don't really pin the blame too much. I mean, he does have part of this. Obviously, a lot of it, goes to him. But obviously, like we said earlier, the offensive line didn't really do him any favors. So he's the zone block is probably like his biggest weakness. Cool football, but some power grounding and things like that. But the vision, or and I can't remember what it was when I were watching, where you and I were a live thing on our other show, and I remember you and I were both looking. I was like, wow, the vision just doesn't seem like it's there at the moment because it was running through guys as opposed to look there's a hole right go through. And so that was concerning to me. It almost I even made a joke like, "Hey, this reminds me of like Trent Richardson." Remember? It feels like it's more crowded than it is, where there's a gap or something like that. And I think that to me made me get worried about it. But he's been open about it. Like I said, he's been open about his struggle. So at
Yeah,
that,
I mean, it's good that he recognizes it, but the same thing, like you mentioned, like I can't remember what game it was, but you're right. Like the hole was right there. And instead of running through it, he chose to run into an opponent. It's
Right.
like he looks for the contact instead of running through the gap,
right,
which is concerning because they worked on that during the offseason last year.
yeah. And so during that interview, it seemed like it almost seemed like he was trying to convince himself, but the team has faith in him. Slowick is telling him, "Hey, slow down," and they're giving him an opportunity. I do want to shed some light on Jawar Jordan, as like you said, Rios. My opinion on him. So with Jawar Jordan, like you said, he was a sixth round at Louisville. He could be a steal if he ends up being the backup. He's able to catch. That's the thing. He's able to catch the ball as well, which just adds another layer of offensive weapon for CJ Stroud. He has tremendous speed and provides special team value, is what D'Amico Ryan said about him. Here's the thing about Jawar Jordan. He doesn't have explosive speed, but has an amazing amount of acceleration, kind of like Derrick Henry, obviously like a smaller version of him, right?
Yeah.
He breaks tackles, lowers his shoulder, and he's able to make cuts on the move without stopping, and his acceleration is one of his best features, like I said. So the fact that he's able to make cuts on the run makes him a little bit more dangerous. And I don't recall seeing Dameon Pierce do that anytime this season. There's a game against Notre Dame that where he gets to the line of scrimmage about 15 miles an hour and then accelerates up to like 20.7 miles per hour. And that speed is just accelerating. It's separate, and what I like about this trio is that it's separate from Mixon and Pierce. He's separate. He's basically in a different category from Mixon and Pierce. So basically a top game speed, depending to see if it works. Now, the only thing is we're depending to see if it works against elite NFL players. If he can be if he can, dude, he's going to be a threat. And in Louisville, I mean, when he transferred over, he worked his way up from fourth place all the way to the top at Louisville, So there's definitely his work ethic is definitely there, So he's able to do those things. So But it's still, even after that, just for the experience, I think Damian Pierce gets that second spot, and we're looking at Jawar Jordan in the third as a third down, as a third back.
Okay. What about you, Bobby? What are your thoughts?
So, kind of agree with a few points that Carlos just made. I feel like the way things are looking right now, I think week one definitely is going to be Joe Mixon, running back number one, Damian Pierce, running back number two. However, his place in the as a RB2 is going to be 100% dependent on him. We talked about the sophomore year slump that he had, and what a fall off it was. And he was as a rookie, he was like the bright light of the offense, basically non-existent offense that we had, and year two completely fell off a cliff. So kind of like you said, he looks to be aware of the situation. Uh, he's taking he's holding himself accountable, and hopefully this marks almost like a clean slate, a new beginning for him. Maybe RB1 is not what he's meant to be in this league, but if he ever wants to become that, this is going to be the year to do it. Being behind somebody like Joe Mixon, I feel like it's going to be good help for him. Kind of like Carlos said, being the 1-2 punch, right? Joe Mixon, being able to catch the ball and make plays. Damian Pierce, we know what he can do through contact, which is good. Like Carlos said, the offensive line didn't do him any favors last year. This offensive line, if it can stay healthy, it's going to do wonders for the running game for the Texans. Now, with all that said, if Damian Pierce can, make good, take advantage of the snaps that he's going to get this season, then he can stay as running back number two. However, if we see the Damian Pierce of last year, where he wasn't reading the defense, he was choosing to go through contact too much and missing that first down by like 2 yards, 1 yard. If we continue to see this rookie mistakes off of him on year three, I can definitely see your Jordan really take that spot for him, because there's not a real reason to draft a running back when you have faith in somebody like Pierce. I don't think the Texans are losing patience with him, but I do think this year is like kind of like make or break it type of situation. He needs to prove himself. So I feel like with Jordan, if Damian starts to slip, I can definitely see Jordan, if he can, take advantage of those opportunities that will present themselves sometime this season. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year, when we go into the playoffs, Damian Pierce, falls relegated to RB3. Like I said, it's going to be dependent 100% on what he does with the snaps that he does get. I am, behind him 100%. I am on his side. I'm on Damian Pierce camp. You guys know this from his rookie year, how big of a fan I was. So I feel like it annoyed me the most when I saw how hard his fall off was.
Right.
But I still do believe, like I said, week one going to be Joe Mixon as a starter and Damian as a backup. Hopefully, we can get a lot of first downs out of those two, like a 1-2 punch combination.
Can I add something to you? I'm sorry, Rose. I know you're
No,
so
go.
when D'Amico Ryan said 1-2 punch, it reminded me of when the Texans had Arian Foster and Ben Tate, and I think that's the goal, to try to get somewhere to replicate something like that. Will it? Probably not, because the Texans were spoiled with Arian Foster. Let's be frank there.
Yeah.
But I think it's what they're trying to replicate, or something similar to that. A 1-2 punch, having Arian Foster, or in this case Joe Mixon, being the fluid back, the starter, and then if Damian Pierce is able to go to the next level, like to say, and understand this offense, you could see him kind of like how you saw Ben Tate years ago, about 10 years ago now, so I think that could be something that they're trying to work for as well.
And I'm sure
Yeah. So
the Miko's got. Sorry, Rios. I'm sure they have a plan for it. I know they're aware of the problem with Damian Pierce, so I'm pretty sure they've been working nonstop this offseason trying to figure that out. Obviously, Joe Mixon was brought in
Right.
because Texans had to let Singletary walk, and Joe Mixon I feel like is a great upgrade on that. But because Damian Pierce wasn't consistent enough, or even wasn't good enough to be a starter last year, this shows that Texans are not afraid to take that spot from anybody. We saw with Singletary stepping up immediately, and like kind of like you said with the 1-2 punch thing, I feel like with how well the offense was on the passing side of the ball, I feel like this is only going to be good for Pierce. Being the offense being way less predictable against opponents. Uh, I'm looking for at least 1 or 2 like really good Damian Pierce games this upcoming season, and I feel like it's gonna come to fruition. Like I said, D'Amico and the team have been working on this. They're aware of the problem. I'm pretty sure it's gonna turn good. It has
that's
to.
that's wishful thinking.
It has to.
Because
It has to because it either does or he's not in the team next year.
Yeah, I could see that.
well, because with Slowick, he had a press conference today after practice, and he said their game plans on offense are going to be dependent on the defense of their opponents. And I think as it should be, like they shouldn't be just rely on one person. Like you go, basically like riding the hot hand. And with the Shanahan offense, that's what they're essentially a running back by committee. Even though you have a bell cow, like look at the 49ers with McCaffrey. Like he's obviously your bell cow running back, but there are certain situations where they use their stable of running backs to kind of spell it for a little bit and take advantage of some mismatches. And I see that with this offense and with Damian Pierce. I think he goes into training camp as the backup running back, but I believe after the preseason he's going to be dropped to the third spot.
It's really just gonna it's on Damian Pierce's hands.
It really is. When Rios, when you brought that example up where Bobby Slowick mentioned that they're going to be based on the opponent's defense or whatnot. Remember, now obviously this is a far reach, but using an example, when the Patriots had Randy Moss, you remember one of the things that they had to really work on was writing like special plays specifically designed for Randy Moss. So
because they never had a guy like Randy on their team before, so they kind of had to change their whole, not their entire offensive philosophy, but they had to throw some wrinkles in it because you got to take advantage of a weapon like that.
They had to, and so at this point, I think is you can look at what Damian Pierce is good at. If you can recognize what Damian Pierce is good at, you can, if you're really going off of the opposing team's defense, I mean, you can look back at that 2022 film by Damian Pierce and look at, hey, what are some of those explosive plays that he had? How can we best utilize them? If you're Bobby Slowick, you're looking at that tape. Look, at this particular down or drive or whatever, he got us like 25, 30 yards, whatever it was. Okay. I'm sure you can make some plays that are similar to that or comparable to that, where you give him the best opportunity to give you those type of plays. At that point, also, Bobby Slowick has to really step in that role.
I think just based off the film of last season, his biggest chance to shine this year is going to be in the goal line situations, because that's an area they struggled in last year, especially in the red zone. They struggled to score touchdowns. If he can show that he could be the guy that could punch it in from inside the 5, that's going to give him a solid role. Alleviate some of that wear and tear on Mixon, because you don't really want Jawar Jordan to be your goal line running back, because the guy is one of the smaller running backs on the roster. But if Pierce can solidify that role as like a goal line back, I mean, that is going to give him that many more opportunities.
Yeah, right. It's gonna raise his confidence as well, because I feel like a lot of the issues last year were like low confidence. Like you could tell as soon as Singletary really took on that running back 1 spot, like we really never saw much from Damian afterwards. I mean, he was in special teams returning punts or whatever, but it was never the same.
It almost reminded me of like your first day on a brand new job and you're like completely and utterly lost or whatever, and you're still trying to figure it out. I felt that's what I felt like with Damian Pierce last season, understanding a brand new offensive scheme that he's not used to. He's like, what am I doing looking like a deer with the headlights? You know what I mean? And so he's just kind of like Where do I go? And so that's what makes me optimistic. It's another season of experience for Bobby Slowick as well. Another season of experience for Dameon Pierce under a brand new system. So there is a chance that there is a chance that hey, he may pick it. He may have picked it up. And it all depends on how much work he was able to put into it, and if he's able to grasp that. And apparently he's been making changes to his body as well, like the conditioning and things like that. So hopefully all those things come into play, and we're able to see another version of Dameon Pierce. The probability of it happening, it's up. It all depends really up to him. So we'll definitely find out more, obviously, as we get into the training camp.
Yeah, I do agree with what you said though. Like the fact that they can definitely like set up like a special place just for him to take advantage of his mismatches and just his strengths basically. I feel like that's the way, that's going to have to be the way to go for the Texans with Dameon Pierce on the roster.
Now, there was something that was pretty interesting today as far as press conferences from the Chiefs. So they had mentioned they plan on taking Harrison Butker off, kickoff duty, because with the new kickoff rules, there's, the probability of him having to make tackles goes up. And it made me think about the Texans roster. Like, do you really want, Fairbairn out there trying to make tackles? Which brings us to running back number 4, Dario Abungawale, because he's basically your backup kicker.
Right.
Because you're not having to kick very far. You can have him, they'll do the kickoffs, because he already plays special teams. And if you need a guy to make a tackle, you'd rather be, him versus, Kaimi Fairbairn, because you saw what happened last season when their kicker was out. They really struggled. There was a couple games that I know one for sure, the Jaguars, they lost because they just couldn't make field goals. Their kicker missed 2 field goals, and he missed the one at the end.
I do remember. Yeah, I remember that game.
I can see them going. I can see them going into the season with at least 4 or 5 running backs. I think that's going to be a very deep position because the Texans ran it. They were one of the highest running teams last season. I think that trend's going to continue, even with all the weapons on offense as far as the passing game goes. I still see them running the ball a lot, but this year they should have more success running it on the early downs and also, being able to catch defenses off guard with the run. Because last season, if they saw Dameon Pierce out there, they knew automatically it was a run.
Yeah, no.
This season, you can run, anyone out there, and it could be a pass or a run.
And honestly, the biggest X factor there is going to be the O-line. If they can stay healthy and they can, get better, like all those rookies, second-year rookies, if they can get better with the run game specifically, I feel like the sky's the limit for the Texans' run game, really.
Definitely. Also, I know D'Amico had also mentioned that that Joel Jordan could also be used in special teams, and returns as well. Again, just because of that accelerative speed that he has. So that could be another way that you could see Joel Jordan at the in some areas as well.
Snaps this year.
Yeah, some snaps.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next position group. I'm going to save wide receivers for last because I think we're going to have a lot to talk about as far as that position goes. So I want to move on to tight ends. Obviously, your starter is going to be Dalton Schultz. Even with the games he missed last season with an injury, he still had a pretty decent season, 59 catches, 635 yards, 5 touchdowns. He was a bit of a security blanket for CJ later in the season. I think another season under his belt, more familiarity with his offense. I think he should, especially with a lot of single coverage he's going to see with, you have 3 other guys that, require a lot of attention. So he should see some favorable matchups against some of these linebackers and possibly, linemen trying to guard him. And he should have, another stellar season. But behind him, there's a lot of uncertainty. You don't really have a solidified number 2. Last season was Brevin Jordan, but I don't think there was a ton of confidence in, being the number 2 tight end because they drafted Cade Stover in the 4th round this season.
He did have some good moments last year.
Yeah, he did. But I believe the reason they drafted Stover is because they, see him, being a better fit for this offense and possibly a better blocker in the run game as well. So my belief is that Stover is going to be the number 2 tight end. I think he wins the job from Brevin Jordan, and I think he brings a different dynamic to the offense than Brevin Jordan does because he's can basically line out and block and then get open. And as we saw on his college game film, he's pretty explosive after the catch.
Mm-hmm.
So who do you guys believe is going to be the backup tight end? This time I'll start with you, Poppy.
I have to say that I agree, man. I feel like obviously the CJ connection there from their college days. It's there, and that's one of the main reasons why they drafted him. I do like Brevin Jordan, but he is. There's something about his game that doesn't scream like number 2 tight end for me.
He disappears a lot. He's
He did.
very
He
inconsistent.
does. Like when he's on the field, 9 times out of 10, that ball is not going to the tight end. Schultz, I feel like he obviously did a great job last year with CJ, and kind of like you said, he did miss some games, he did miss some like important catches, but all things considered, I feel like he's the tight end for the now. Kate Stover definitely seems to be the guy they drafted for the future. I forget what the Dalton Schultz extension looks like.
It's 3 years.
Is it 3 years?
Basically, all the contracts they've been doing lately they're 3 years coincide with CJ's rookie deal. So that's essentially your window, 3 years.
Which is like the smart play, I believe. I feel like Cade is going to be basically almost like I feel like Schultz is going to be kind of like a mentor with Cade on this offense. We saw how good the connection was with CJ last year. I feel like they're trying to like almost solidify that by bringing Kate Stover in. I do believe, contrary to the running back, conversation we just had, I feel like Kate Stover as a rookie automatically becomes tight end number 2 on this offense. And if the Texans wanna be a little wild and play some of the 2 tight end sets, I can see him getting a lot of snaps this season. Brevin, he's gonna be like fresh legs, every now and again. Hopefully there's no injuries either, but obviously he can have some good moments, Brevin Jordan, but I feel like that position week 1 comes in, and I think it's gonna be a Stover, tight end 2.
Carlos, what are your thoughts, buddy?
Gentlemen, I agree with both of you. I think
boring.
Calling
we
it
all
like
agree on we all agree on something, man.
Yeah,
it's weird. It's gonna rain tomorrow.
It's a unanimous. Actually, it is gonna rain tomorrow.
It is gonna rain tomorrow.
It's gonna rain overnight, bro.
It's been raining every goddamn day.
So no, honestly, I do agree with you guys, because that's the reason why you drafted Kate Stover. You have some familiarity with CJ Stroud already. Yes, you did. It was a season. I get it. It was a season that they had, but they were still, they had a connection there. They had a connection there. I think with CJ Stroud, the last season he was there, he snatched 36 passes for 406 yards, and scoring 5 touchdowns along the way. And these were numbers that were put up with CJ Stroud there. They gave him number 87, by the way. If nobody was aware, the Texans gave him number 87. So
Farmer Gronk.
What I like about Kate Stover here, why I think he's going to be number 2 is what you guys said about Brevin Jordan. Brevin Jordan is like, hey, I'm here, and then you forget that he's there. Let me take you back to that Ravens game. How efficient was he during that Ravens game?
Basically, advanced statistics, he had one of the worst games out of anyone out there.
Yeah, honestly,
exactly. And
missed key blocks, missed key assignments,
which is so frustrating, because that was after the Browns game.
He was
actually pretty good on that. So it just leans into that like inconsistency.
That's what I was trying to make my point on. There is no consistency with Brevin Jordan, and I think you drafted someone to gain or get some consistency out of. So with Brevin Jordan, Rio's point, I apologize, with Kate Stover, like what Rio said earlier, after the catch, boy, he takes off. He will leap over people. He takes off and has a pretty decent speed. Very, very reminiscent to Gronk. One guy that I compare him to, when he came out, as soon as he came out of college, right? The thing was, he's great up to his speed is fine after the catch, but he's a poor blocker. You know who they said that about? George Kittle. George Kittle had the exact same thing. Poor blocker, but man, after the catch, he can run. They said that about George Kittle. And if you realize, George Kittle's with the 49ers. They have a very similar offensive scheme to the Texans, that Kyle Shanahan offense. So I can see Kate Stover eventually moving on. Maybe not this season, but maybe after Dalton Schultz is no longer with the team. I do agree with. I think Dalton Schultz is more of a transitional tight end. But eventually, Kate Stover is going to be the guy, that the Texans make their number one tight end. Right now, I think this is a golden opportunity. You have a tight end 1 and a tight end 2. It's a great time to have those tight ends. And again, I always make this point. I sound like a broken record. When's the last time the Texans had a two tight end duo?
They barely had one. They barely had one decent tight end.
Right. Owen Daniels, and if you even want to count it, Garrett Graham or Griffin.
Joel Dreesen.
Joel Dreesen. Like you can, and that's 10 years ago, 11 years
I don't even know who you guys are talking about.
Exactly. And so
it's been a good minute.
Yeah, it's been
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Yeah, Pepperidge Farms remembers. No. Anyway. And so it's been a while. And so it's refreshing to see that again. Gary Kubiak was very fond of the two tight end tandem that they had with the Texans offense. Again, Gary Kubiak ran that Kyle Shanahan offense, So it's very reminiscent, and that's what makes me excited, because those were like some really good years that Texans fans really appreciated. And to see some of this happening again, it's like, oh, definitely, like you see the vision. But with Stover, I could see him comparable to George Kittle. Now, will he play to that level? That's yet to be determined. But it's very similar with the poor blocking scheme that was said about him. But man, once he catches the ball, good luck stopping him, and that's very reminiscent of George Kittle. So for that reason, I'm gonna say he becomes tight end 2. And like with Brevin Jordan, dude, you see flashes of him once in a while, and the inconsistency probably keeps him at, in the back end, maybe some special teams, or maybe not even in this team anymore. So we'll see.
No, Carlos brought up a very good point as far as, similarities to the 49ers offense. Again, when the Texans had one of the most potent offenses is when Kyle Shanahan was our offensive coordinator. You had Matt Schaub, Pro Bowl MVP. He almost led the league in passing. And a lot of the guys they drafted this season, like they look for guys that are going to fit into the Shanahan offense. Because they saw similarities between, George Kittle and Stover. I'm not saying they're the same player, but there's similarities there, and that's what they wanted him. Same thing with Jawhar Jordan. He fits perfectly into this zone scheme.
Yep.
So I think, you see the vision with the guys they drafted, where they want to place these guys, and the guys that picked them in free agency. Slowly but surely, the vision is coming together from the looks of it. Definitely see the Shanahan imprints all over this offense.
Oh, yeah.
Let me ask you guys something. Is there a world where throughout this upcoming season, Stover actually becomes tight end number 1, or resembles more of a tight end number 1, if he starts to outplay Schultz, maybe?
That's a good point.
Like if him and CJ start building a good chemistry and good connection on the field, he starts to get a lot of targets and start making a lot of plays. Does he take over as tight end number 1? What does that mean for Schultz?
It could be a possibility. I mean, what it means for Schultz, he still is on a 3-year deal, so maybe less receptions for Schultz, but you got to understand, those are going to be your security blankets of your tight ends, because you already have a stacked offense, and we'll get more into it, like Rio said, with the wide receivers. But at this point, those are going to be your security blankets. And with the core that you have, if those are going to be your security blankets, man, you're in for I'd be scared if I was the defenses, facing the Texans at that point. But honestly, there's a possibility. I just don't see it this year, because it's a new system for Kate Stover. But the relationship and the chemistry is there with CJ. So again, it's all about, it's a possibility. It just depends on what we see. A lot of it we get to see it during training camp. Rios and I have been to several of them, and sometimes we're almost able to call them out in previous times. He's we're not, we're not, but you could definitely see it. It's very apparent,
Especially, between the years of 2020 to like 2022, you can tell, oh, that's going to be a tight end screen. Oh, it's going to be run up the middle. It was very predictable. But last season's training camp, it was man, just the energy there was so different. And like the offense, again, they didn't open up the whole playbook for the public, obviously, but they did throw in some wrinkles where you couldn't just predict, hey, that's what the play is gonna be, which was refreshing to see. It just, especially after attending the last few years of training camps and just, it's tight end screen, it's a play action, it's.
And that's the thing. Yeah, exactly. 100%. That's the thing. Like right now, they're giving CJ so many options to throw the ball. You have running backs that are able to catch the ball. You have 2 quality tight ends, and then you have your receiving core. Like CJ has a plethora of different players that he could just, I learned that in high school. A different, of different players that you can just chunk the ball to if needed be, and it alleviates during the blitz, because quick throw. Have you seen some OTAs where CJ is just kind of like no look, no pass, sort of
no look, no pass?
Yeah, no look pass.
That's called a sack.
That he just
that's called turnover on downs.
Turnover on downs. Yeah. Now, the what Mahomes does, the
no look passes.
Yeah. And that's some of that backyard football style,
and that shows, the offense, the team building chemistry, knowing where everybody's going to be at any given moment, in that trust that that person, CJ's going to make the right throw, and that person's going to make the catch and make the right play.
Yeah, just like in basketball, when you do no look passes, because you know exactly who your team is going to be, and you trust they're going to be in the spot they're supposed to be. You don't do that unless you have that kind of faith in your. Not just your playmaker, but your person receiving the ball, whether it be basketball or football. And seeing that, CJ take that year 2 jump, it's going to be exciting to see. They put it all together.
Yeah, he's got options for sure.
But it brings me to my next point. So with all the playmakers, there's going to be one position that has one less roster spot. So I believe they're going to carry 4 running backs this year. So there's a possibility it might be only 3 tight ends. And if there's only 3 tight ends, you got 2 guys that have been on the roster for about 3 seasons now. With Brevin Jordan and Tegan. I can't pronounce his last name.
Quitoriano or whatever.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So I think that 3rd tight end spot is going to come down to who performs best in preseason. Yeah. It's going to be close in a training camp, but I think it's going to come down to how those guys perform in preseason, see who makes the final roster. And I wouldn't be surprised if Brevin Jordan gets cut.
I wouldn't be surprised either, but at the same time, he had some good moments last year, so I feel like having him as a tight end number 3 isn't much harm.
No, but Tegan also had some moments where he showed flashes as well. It's just he's had trouble with injuries.
That's the thing. That's the biggest thing with him. I think he might be injured right now, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know. That's going to be interesting, but I'm excited to see what comes of Kate Stover this year. Yeah. I hope he gets a lot of snaps.
Yeah, likewise. I'd like to see what they can do, and definitely I could see him definitely overtaking the tight end 1 position again, especially if what we said, where the similarities of George Kittle, if the Texans can have their own version of George Kittle,
it's over.
Dangerous.
It's over.
Imagine that's over.
Greatest show on turf, part 2. which brings me to our 3rd position group, the wide receivers. And there is a lot to talk about because there's a lot of new pieces and pieces where we're not sure where they're going to go just yet. So let's start with the guy that ended up being our wide receiver 1 for the season last year, Nico Collins, who also just got extension. Congrats to him.
Got the bag.
Secured the bag. But so with Nico last year, he had 80 catches for almost 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns. And he really definitely stepped up. I remember before the season started, in a lot of our group chats, a lot of us thought that he wouldn't even make the roster, which is, looking back at it, seems pretty foolish. But again, you didn't see much from him because injuries and the inconsistencies at quarterback, and he just couldn't really see what he was capable of. And this season, when he had better ball placement and, much better consistency at the quarterback position, he was able to show what he's fully capable of. And, the Texans rewarded him with a new contract. So, obviously, we brought in Stephon Diggs. He's been the wide receiver 1 everywhere he's gone. And then you had Tank Dell, who for most of the season while he was healthy was essentially your wide receiver 1 as well. I played Nico at times and had more catches and more yards until he went down against the Broncos. So it brings me to my point. So who do we see as wide receiver one? I'm gonna start with you. I'm gonna give my opinion last. I'm gonna go with you, Carlos. Who do you think is gonna be the wide receiver one on this roster?
I still think it's going to be Nico Collins. I think Nico Collins will be wide receiver one. No disrespect at all to Stephon Diggs. I do think Stephon Diggs is motivated this season because of the type of contract that the Texans gave him this year. It's basically you're looking at a 1-year rental alone,
Yeah.
And so it's like soccer. He's basically loaned out if you think about it. So for a season and see how it works out. And I think I think now that that Nico just got extended, I think that kind of puts a little bit more that sends a message out to Stephon Diggs and says, hey, Nico just got paid. Nico just got paid. And like you said, he showed us a season of what he can be when he has a consistent quarterback that is able to place the ball directly in his hands. You made a point of like there were group chats where we were in where they were like, oh, Nico's not even going to make it before this season because the injuries, the yardage or whatnot. But now that you have a consistent quarterback, a good quarterback that can place the ball on him, you saw what he was able to do. He was 3 yards away from 1,300 yards.
Yeah,
like that is incredible. 8 touchdowns, forget about it.
And that's what we're missing. I believe, like 1 or 2 games last year.
I think he missed at least 2 games. Yeah,
exactly. So the Texans obviously rewarded him, and with Stephon Diggs being here, obviously on a loan, or not a loan. I'm sorry, on a almost like a rental.
Feels like a loan.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it sets the mood for him too. I was like, okay, I see what they did. Nico had a season where he just balled out. If I can do the same, that's motivational. That's motivation for Stephon Diggs because not only are you expecting to get paid, you're also on a team that's basically a contender. So you can get both things. You can get the bag, and you can be on a team that's definitely in contention. I know a lot of people say they're not in contention yet. Debatable. It depends on how you see it. Yes, the schedule is a lot more difficult, but that's why they added all the weapons that they did. You have a solidified offense on paper, at least. You have a defense that's on paper. Again, this is all on paper, pretty decent too. With some good signings as well. Danielle Hunter being one of them. Aljair as well. Like you covered things that you needed. Now, with that being said, going back to the original point, I think Nico still balls out. I think Stephon Diggs is there as a helper, as a person. He's definitely going to get the ball. There's absolutely no chance that he's not. And then you got Tank Dell. You got Tank Dell. 3 guys that could possibly go for 1,000 yards this upcoming season. Possibly 3,000 yard receivers. Basically, CJ has options, but I would say number 1, I think goes to Nico. Now, where I find number 2, that's my hardest choice because Tank or Stephon, and I still can't decide where. So just because of the youth and a second year, I'm gonna go with Tank Dell, and it's weird for me to say Stephon Diggs would be the third on this one. It's weird for me to say that, and I don't feel comfortable with it. But the way that Tank Dell played last season, if he still can play up to that caliber and he stays healthy, I think he could be 2, Stephon 3. But I know it's really hard to say. So I'm gonna say Nico, Tank, Stephon.
Jeez.
Okay.
Those are my 3. Again, it's weird to say.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You think that's weird? Wait till my 3.
Again?
So,
just wait till my 3. My 3 is going to be a little bit out of left field.
Right. Go ahead.
Like Joe Mechie, wide receiver 1.
Well, hey, that's the thing.
Brown.
Because of those guys, you still forget that John Mechie is still on the horizon.
Yeah.
You forget there's Xavier Hutchinson. You forget that there's
Brown.
Still other,
Woods.
Brown. Robert Woods, like apparently who had a pretty good OTA day today, which was weird. Like you still have a plethora, there's the word again, of receivers that are pretty decent. And then up and
He,
coming,
he learns one word on the dictionary.
one
Use it
word,
about 30 times.
Every
soliloquy.
conversation, I'm just gonna pull it out.
Soliloquy.
Plethora.
Soliloquy. Ooh,
You saw how I
I love you.
soliloquied that? Yeah.
I
Wait,
love
I
no,
don't know what
that.
that means.
yeah, I mean, all right, no, but there's definitely a lot of options. But for me, again, I'll say it:
Yeah.
Nico, Tank, Stefan, Mechie.
Okay.
So let me
Go ahead,
let
Bobby.
me let me walk you guys through my two thoughts on this, right? Because it's two separate things that I envision that could happen, right? Um, Obviously, before the Nico extension, I thought it was pretty clear. We brought Stephon Diggs to be wide receiver number one. You don't bring a guy like that unless you're making like fixing to make a push. And a big name like that, we're talking, top 5 wide receivers. Some might even say top 3 in the league. And you don't make him your wide receiver number one. However, after this Nico extension, that's the Texans showing good faith in him. After the season he just had, like you said, he was 3 yards away from 1,300 yards. An insane output, given that, like you guys said, we didn't think that he was going to be all that this year.
You never cracked 500 yards.
I remember we had conversations like he's definitely, and I said this several times. I don't think he's wide receiver number one. And last year, especially after Dell went down, he was exceptional. Now, here's the thing. The more I think about this Stephon move, right, the more I worry about, his ego getting in the way. I would hate for the Texans offense to force the ball to him, given the gravity of his name, coming into Houston after being in Buffalo for so long, and doing good things in Buffalo with Josh Allen. But I feel like I just hope that the Texans don't try to force the ball too much. Try to force the issue like, oh, he's going to be the guy who's going to get 1,500 yards this year. Because I do believe that Nico and Tank can make a case for wide receiver number one in this team. What I would also hate is that maybe he doesn't get the ball as much as he wants, right, Stephon? And we start to see more of what we saw from Nico Collins last year, and then maybe Tank Dell comes back from injury, just as good, if not better, than he was last year before he went down. And then maybe that starts some locker room disputes and behind the scenes. Because as much as I respect Stephon Diggs' game, it's just that bit of an ego diva mentality that he has shown to have.
You mean like toxicity or something like that?
Yeah, like borderline toxicity, right? Like you said, with Nico getting paid after the season he just had, maybe that's an incentive for him. It's like, okay, so if I ball out this year, I'm definitely going to get paid, right? And that's the mentality. That's the mentality he should be coming in
After a
with.
season of productive play, too.
Productive play. He has. So is that going to make him demand the ball more? Is he going to get pissy when Tank Dell is getting, it's on the board with 10 touchdowns, or he's only got 4 on the season? Like, what's kind of going to be, and that's something that the Miko and the front office and everybody is going to have to basically handle as the season goes on. Taking all that away, let's say like the off the field stuff, let's disregard it completely. It's tough, dude. It's tough, Carlos, because you saying Stephon Diggs could be wide receiver 3. It hurts me a little bit, but I get it, man.
It sucks. It's a weird position to say. I
It's
had
a good
trouble
problem
saying.
to have. Do not get me wrong. It's a good.
I'm over here like, am I stupid?
3 great wide receivers, and like you said, that 4th spot is completely open for anybody to get. I feel like, just given with the names and everything, I feel like week 1 just because of how well Nico did last year, I feel like week 1 is going to be Nico wide receiver 1, Stephon Diggs wide receiver 2, as he settles a little bit more into the system and playing with CJ and all that. I wouldn't be surprised if by week 5, Stephon is just completely taken off, balling out completely. At the same time, with what you said, Carlos, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a little bit down on the pecking order, which would be kind of a shame, bringing a name like that to not utilize him as much.
Low
As long
risk,
as,
high
as long as
reward.
the Texans are winning, I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
As long as they're winning. It's going to be when they start struggling that the media is going to, and the fans too, are going to start pointing fingers at everybody. But I'm not going to completely agree with you, Carlos. I think it's going to be Nico, Diggs, Tank.
Okay. What about that 4th spot?
I hope it's Mechie.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for the guy so much.
Same.
Hell, I think it's probably going to be Noah Brown, to be honest, but I'm just going to go with Mechie.
Yeah, it's a toss-up, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like Noah Brown was more consistent than Mechie was last year, but like CJ just makes everybody look so good. Before last season, I would have guessed Noah Brown was going to get 1 reception all year.
Yeah.
Yeah, before that season, most people that have high expectations for Noah Brown or for Nico Collins, so you hadn't seen them eclipse 500 yards in the season. Mm-hmm. But looking back at some of the film, a lot of those, when me and Carlos saw that in person, we went to some of the games, the ball was either thrown, 10 feet over his head or at his feet.
Yeah.
With better ball placement, he's shown we can do. But now going back to you guys' take on Stephon Diggs about the quote-unquote toxicity. You know what cures toxicity?
Money.
Winning.
Oh.
Well. Winning.
Not always.
Think about it. Minnesota, a game away from the Super Bowl. This close. Couldn't make it. Buffalo, that overtime. They probably they probably beat the Chiefs if they get the ball in that overtime that they lost. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They keep getting close and close year after year, and not winning eventually takes a toll on you. Like, if he's made enough money throughout his career, I don't think the bag. This is just my personal belief. I don't know this for a fact, but I don't think the bag is the top of his priority list. I think, especially trying to secure the legacy. At the end of the day, it's about the rings.
Okay.
Why would he go to the Texans in the first place?
The Texans are
because the Bills blocked the trade to the Chiefs.
Yeah. Thank you, Chiefs. I mean Bills.
Yeah, the Bills. Yeah, the Bills blocked the trade to the Chiefs.
I forget that it was a trade and not free agency.
Yeah, it was a trade. So the Bills blocked that. They're like, you can go anywhere but Kansas City.
Which fair enough.
Thank you, Bills.
Yeah. It's not like they need any more help, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he saw, okay, so what's my next best option if I can't go to Kansas City? Team with an upcoming.
Let me go to the second best quarterback in the game.
Up and coming quarterback, up and coming head coach, an organization that looks like they're putting it all together.
Positive culture.
Part up and great. Positive culture, great leadership there. Like, you know what? These guys are like they look like they're a few pieces away. Let me see if I can contribute to this culture and get over that hump and finally get that Lombardi trophy.
Did he demand the trade from the Bills?
It was. From what I've been reading and what I've been talking to from Bills fans, I think it was mutual on both sides. I think it was just one of those things where divorce would have been the best option for both parties. It was Diggs, he gets a fresh start, and with the Bills, they changed their offense, mid-season, and they became more of a running team because they actually had running backs that they could rely on that weren't named Josh Allen.
You're right.
So that's why Stephon Diggs' numbers after week 8, when they nosedive basically because they were more of a run first team, short passes, and it affected his numbers.
Yeah.
But going with all that, so I think with him, I don't think the ego's going to be an issue, which is why for wide receiver 1, I'm going to go with the guy that was wide receiver 1 for most of the season last year, Tank Dell.
Okay.
He has the most chemistry with CJ. You saw that's the guy that CJ Stroud wanted the Texans to draft after he got drafted. That was his pick for a wide receiver. And you could see that the chemistry in OTAs, training camp, preseason, you saw during the season. And I think that year two, I think both of those guys take major steps to year two. So I think that's going to be wide receiver one. Wide receiver two, I'm going to go with Nico. Because again, when Tank Dell went down, he stepped up and was able to take over that role and was able to stretch the defenses out. And so I said, I know it feels weird saying Stephon Diggs is wide receiver 3.
Okay.
That's why I said he buys into the team culture and he accepts, not saying he's not going to have, numbers. He's still going to get his. I think, because I want to say the 33rd AI that had predictions for what the Texans receivers were going to do this season. So let me read it off to you guys. So we'll start off with Tank Dell. So for him, they predicted him to have 65 catches, 898 yards, 6 touchdowns. For Nico, they predicted him similar stats to last season: 75 catches, 1,125 yards, 7 touchdowns.
Consistent.
And for Stephon Diggs, they predicted him to have 88 catches, 1,096 yards, 8 touchdowns. So for me, I see those.
So would they put him as wide receiver 2 for Stephon?
No, that makes him wide receiver 1 with those statistics.
Well, with the catches, he'd be wide receiver 1, but Nico had the most yards.
Yeah.
And Diggs had the most touchdowns.
Interchangeable, right?
So when I say wide receiver 1, 2, and 3, I still foresee Tank probably having the most catches. I think Nico has the most yards, and I'm gonna go with Stephon Diggs with the most touchdowns and be the go-to guy in the third down situation.
It's crazy. It's crazy that you guys are saying that, but I do understand it. However, Rios, with your positioning, I feel like that's gonna depend a lot on how Tank Dell comes back from that injury. Mm-hmm. And we know like the whole shooting and whatnot that he was involved with. Thankfully, it wasn't anything too serious. But it's going to depend on how he does come back from that injury.
He's back already. He was out there practicing.
Right, I understand that. But, like, on the NFL field, like, next season. That's what I'm talking about. With the season that Nico just had, I could definitely see D'Amico and the coaching staff leaning into that a little bit more just because of how great Nico was. Because, Tank Dell was amazing. Thunder was definitely amazing. And it was very unexpected. And I think that was the biggest thing with him. It was very unexpected. Except for you, Rios. I think you called it. I think you said he was going to be special from the moment he got drafted. But with Stephon and Nico, I'm afraid that Tank is going to get the least amount of looks. It's all going to depend on the Texans winning, though, how they start to win it. Because if they, like I said earlier, if they start forcing the issue too much with Diggs and stuff not falling, I can definitely see them transitioning to more of a Dell Nico combo, kind of like they were last season. And then that's whatever happens with Diggs after that is going to be, up to everybody else.
And you still got your tight ends as a safety net, and you still got your running back
mixing.
Bro,
it's
like that is like
they're gonna
offense.
To use Carlos's word, plethora of weapons.
Plethora. Yeah.
Tomato. No, but I foresee all 3 receivers eclipsing 1,000 yards, but I don't think they go over 1,100. I think they're probably all 3 will be under 1,100 yards, but still having 3 1,000-yard receivers, it's a nice problem to have.
Yeah,
it's a good problem to have.
1,000%.
You have Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell as your red zone threats, which Stephon Diggs, he's proven he's a red zone threat. But Tank Dell, the smallest guy in the field, being a red zone threat is crazy. But I watched him his entire career at the University of Houston, and he would just disappear, and then all of a sudden you see him in the end zone with the ball. Like, just his separations among the best in the NFL, and I think
those whip routes are going to go crazy with them.
And you feel like because of the distraction of Stephon Diggs being a name. You feel like those defenders are going to be on Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, like if they're going to double anybody, it's going to be Diggs, right?
They're going to double cover somebody. It could be Diggs. It gives much of an opportunity for Tank Dell to sneak around and catch the ball.
And that's why I think Kate Stover is going to be so good this year.
Yeah,
because the secondary is going to be so far stretched covering Diggs and Dell and Nico, because we all know what kind of threats they can be, that somebody like Schultz or Stover is
going to get open,
catch the ball, and they're going to run with it.
That's what I'm saying. You're
Yeah,
gonna
because with Nico, they're gonna guard the deep ball. With Stephon Diggs, they're gonna guard the intermediate routes. That leaves the short stuff right there for the tight ends and for Tank Dell.
Yeah,
Because he excels in creating separation in those short spaces. That's
Exactly.
why I have him as wide receiver one. Because again, the defensive focus is going to be on Diggs, obviously, because the name and the pedigree. Nico, because they saw the big plays he had last year. He had averaged almost 17 yards a catch last year.
Let me ask you a question based on your Tank Dell, which I don't think it's a bad thing. I think any way that we have put our wide receivers in order.
Yeah. Crazy that none of us had Diggs first. Then.
No, and that's fine. And I think no matter which way, but for you, Reels, really quick, when you mentioned Tank Dell as number one, do you have him at number one just because of the amount of yardage or touchdowns that he's going to get?
I think he means I think he's talking about the touches that he's going to get.
I apologize. Yeah, the catches or the yardage or touchdowns.
So I think I had mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I have him number one because he's going to have the most catches because he's going to get a lot of the short stuff, short and intermediate stuff, and third down stuff. It's going to be Diggs, and I think Nico's going to be your big play guy. He's going to be the guy that takes the top off the defenses.
Yeah,
because Tank Dell, he's great at creating separation, but he's not necessarily a burner.
Yeah,
but he excels in those short yardage situations and the short throws and creating space in the red zone. So I think he's going to be your leading receiver as far as like catches and possibly touchdowns. Nico is going to be probably your top guy as far as yardage goes, and Diggs, like I said, he's not going to be that far behind. Like I said, he's just going to spread the ball around. He's shown that he can spread the ball around. So I don't think anyone's going to go hungry in this offense.
Yeah, at this point, what makes Tank also, he's just a great route runner. He's an amazing route runner. You've seen the tapes of him. He does. I feel like with what makes him a great runner is he can create separation based on the route running, his route running ability. But man, he's as far as his route running, it's impeccable, and I think that's where I'm willing to see is how. If the injury, not the whole shooting thing, but the injury itself, if it had any implications on him with his route running ability,
with the separation and everything, because it's his biggest strength. So we're gonna see how that develops.
I don't think it does, but
it should. It's a bone. Bones heal.
Yeah. So regardless, I think
it's a bone. It grows back stronger than after you break it. He should be fine. It was not like he tore a muscle or tore a ligament that. This is never the same again. It was a broken leg.
Oh, just a broken leg.
Oh, just a broken leg. Yeah.
Just a broken leg.
So really quick, one thing that I wanted to I talked to Rios about in one of the text messages is I kind of wanted to compare I want to go back to the Nico Collins contract really quick. So with Nico Collins, he's looking at. Let me see. He's I think the top 10. Paid receiver.
He's number 7 right now.
I thought it was top 10 because he was looking at 72.
Yeah, I said number 7. That's top 10, sir.
No, he's like, I saw number 7. Oh, never mind. I'm looking at a different thing. Number 7, 72 million, 750,000. Yeah, 50 million guaranteed. 3 years. So he's in between. So Devontae Adams is the highest paid one right now. And so he's in, Devontae Adams. So I'm looking at this, and the guys above Nico Collins, Devontae Smith, Cooper Kupp, Keenan Allen, Calvin Ridley, AJ Brown, Amari Cooper, Tyreek Hill, Amon Ross St. Brown, and obviously Devontae Adams. Those are the guys that are getting paid more than Nico Collins. Now
you can add one more name to the list, Waddle.
Oh yeah, exactly. Today, Waddle. That's right.
Waddle is now number 3.
Yeah,
he's third highest paid wide receiver in the league.
Exactly.
Which is crazy because I feel like he was very underutilized.
So at that point, my point with that is like, do you guys think that Nico kind of gave the Texans a little bit of a discount?
Definitely.
Don't know because all of the guys you mentioned, I feel like they're better.
Okay, so Rios, tell me first why you think. I think he gave him a discount. I really do think that. Rios, why do you think they did give him a discount?
So if you look at the average, it's about $24 million a year, which again, going based off last season's numbers, based on his production, more than well deserved. But look at the guys who are due for extensions this year: Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Ayuk. That number is going to start with a 3 next year.
Yeah, those numbers are
So
going to
in 2 years, him making 24 million an average could look like a steal when you've got guys probably making over 30, 35 million a season. And if he's giving you top 10 receiver production, I mean, he can give him a discount. And it's only a 3-year deal. He'll be 28 when his contract expires. He can still sign another big contract.
That's right. Poppy, why do you think?
I think it's right on the money. I think it's right on the money. Given with the production he did last year, just because he was so unexpected to get that kind of production for him, I feel like it's just right on the money. I don't think it's like you said, next year people are going to get paid more, but I think that's just like a timing thing. All of the guys that you named on that list, I believe that they're all better and more consistent. It's gonna honestly that this conversation is gonna depend on what it looks like by the end of next season. Because if Nico falls down to wide receiver 3, if Diggs really balls out and Dell does what we know he can do, and let's say whoever wide receiver 4 is steps up, and then Nico falls out on the west side, because that's the biggest thing about this wide receiver core. Any of these guys can step up, and any of these guys can fall by the wayside when it's all said and done. That's the risk that you run with, 3 wide receivers that are definitely have 1,000-yard potential, if not more. I feel like it's right on the money. I feel like the extension was good. It was well deserved. With what we saw last year, $72 million 3-year. I feel like it's exactly the kind of extension that he deserved, that the Texans, anything more would have been overkill. I would say if it was cheaper, if we were talking maybe 65 million, 40 guaranteed, I feel like that would have been a steal. But I feel like it's right on the money. I'm not feeling like it's that high of a discount. Even the guys that you said are going to get paid more next year, I feel like out of all of those that you mentioned, I feel like they're still all of them better than Nico, except for maybe Higgins. I feel like I need to see more from Higgins to put him there. But I feel like all of those guys you mentioned, they're better than Nico was last year. So,
well, yeah, I mean, obviously your Jamar Chase and your Jefferson's going to get 35 million,
Right.
but
exactly. So that's why I feel like it's a timing thing. He's still too early. Like you said, he can definitely get it back. Well, after this contract is up, if he's
25, right? So
exactly. If he stays consistent, like he doesn't have to put 1,300 yards like he did last year every single year. But if he can do over 1,000, maybe 1,100 for one of those 3 years, I feel like he will definitely earn like a bigger bag.
Well, if he puts,
I mean, Waddle's
for the next 3 years, do you consider him at the top?
I'm sorry.
So if he puts up those 1,000+ yards for the next 3 seasons, would you consider him at the top? So
definitely. If my guy averages 1,100 yards for the next 3 years, I feel like he will definitely be one of the top wide receivers in the league. Okay. Like some of these guys aging out a little bit. You were about to mention Waddle.
Yeah.
Like he's definitely gonna get paid, but
he did get paid.
He did.
Well, yeah, but he last season he kind of was underutilized. I feel like that was mostly on the offensive scheme and Tua maybe not being at his best. But I feel like at the end of this contract extension for Nico, if he delivers on that, I feel like he's going to be one of those wide receivers that's going to probably top 6 highest paid wide receivers. Then,
do you consider Jalen Waddle to be better than Nico Collins?
He's been more consistent.
He's been way more consistent, and the only reason why he kind of took a step down is because Tyreek Hill got there.
Okay.
And when you get like a definitely number 1 like Tyreek, I feel like your numbers are definitely going to go down. Like I said, Tua last year and the Dolphins in general offensively weren't at their best. I feel like if Tyreek, let's say, wasn't there, Waddle would have definitely balled out more than he did. Not to say that he had a bad year. He just wasn't a good year to his standards. So
Okay.
I still do believe that Waddle is a more consistent wide receiver. Like if Waddle was like on the Texans instead of Diggs per se, um, I wouldn't shy away from putting him wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Definitely.
Okay. All right.
Well, I think with the way they structured Waddle's contract, the money doesn't hit till 2026, and by then Tyreek
Mm-hmm.
either won't be on the team or retired because he'll be late 30s at that point.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah,
way they structured is pretty smart, and so we'll see if at that point what the wide receiver market looks like as far as his contract goes, because this is 3-year extension, but it doesn't kick in for 2 years.
Yeah.
He's still under his previous deal. So they a smart deal because you basically view this guy as your number one, and it's kind of like with Nico Collins. His contract, it's he's the receiver of the future, and it's also his contract is tied with CJ because by the time his contract's up, that's when CJ's rookie deal is up. So that way, in 3 years, you can determine, hey, do we keep this core together? Are we able to afford these guys? And kind of go from there. A lot of these contracts with Nico and with Waddle, I think both of their contracts were given to them, one, to compensate them for what they've accomplished this past season, but also looking towards the future.
Yeah. I feel like it was a smart move by the Texans to extend Nico now.
Agreed. All right. Well, hey guys, follow us at our YouTube channel and our X account at B Blitz Pod. Just how you see it right there. At B Blitz Pod. That's our YouTube channel and our X account. Please subscribe to us so we can keep giving you more content on the Texans and around the NFL. Okay. And of course, please follow our Esquina, which we're a big part of now. Their IG account is at our Esquina, just like you see it there. And of course, the X account down here at our Esquina as well, giving you plenty of articles, news articles, different podcasts for the Latino voices. Great stuff going on there at our Esquina. Join us next week for more on the Texans, OTAs, maybe some more upcoming Texans news. But again, give us a follow, of course, on our X account, again, at BBlitzPod, and of course, on our YouTube channel. That's going to be it for us this week. Appreciate you, Rios. A heck of a show. That's going to be it. All right, guys. Peace.
Peace out.